theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Recruiting Hour. Mike Schaefer, Connor Happer here on Friday. We are ending out the Recruiting Hour the only way that we know how. Discussing Nebraska football and recruiting and whatever else comes to mind. All of those things.
Getting in the weeds.
We haven't gotten into the weeds yet, but maybe for the final segment, for old time's sake.
What would we go in the weeds on?
I don't know. I don't really have anything that's real weed specific at this point in time.
We'll get there.
So we'll see if we can drum up some weeds. But in the meantime, I want to talk about the upcoming season a little bit. And of course, we're going to have plenty of time to do this when we are on from 8 to 11 on the Happer and Schaefer show. If it does seem like I'm plugging it a lot, it's because I am. And I think that I should.
You should.
And you should join us from 8 to 11.
Please do.
Or find us on podcast form. Or stream it from theticketfm.com or the app. These are all possibilities.
Or the video streams.
Or the video stream. I
Starter
forget
Hammer
about
video
the video stream. Yesterday we were asked, how you would sum up my style in one word.
Oh yeah.
And we came up with laid back.
I said for about 20 seconds. College.
Yeah. I was thinking about this because this is what I do when I was driving my short drive home. I feel like comfortable would also describe
Comfortable.
because I basically, and you've seen me, like I don't wear this. I don't generally dress the same way to go to practice that I do when I'm in the studio. I'm usually much more in like polo and.
I mean, it's just you took off the shirt and turned it and put a collar on.
Yeah,
it.
There's slightly more professionalism to it.
Yeah.
And I wear pants or shorts with belt loops.
And not that I'm any different. I don't know. You just have a way of making it seem
it could
more
just
comfortable.
Be the backwards golf hat most of the time.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe that's no longer cool. Or maybe it never was cool, but it's comfortable. I like it.
It doesn't matter if it's
cool. It works for me. So, I figured comfortable would be the way to sum up whatever that question
that sounds
was
right.
we got from the
I
stream.
think that makes sense.
So, all right. I just want to bring up these 4 names. There's nothing tricky about this, nothing special, but they're all transfers in for Nebraska in the 2021 season. We get the sense, in our conversations that Nebraska is going to be using the transfer portal quite a bit to kind of fill out its 2022 class. And these are the guys they have that kind of filled out the 2021 class. And so we can talk generally about them. There's no like game to this. It's no will start, will sit, will play sort of thing. But it's more so just what your expectations are for each of these 4. And really kind of based on what you've heard, what you've seen. And so we'll start with seemingly a fairly easy one. And we'll start with Samori Toure.
Well, I think expectations are high. That's for sure. I think
are they higher now than they were in the spring? Is that a confusing question?
No, it's not confusing. I'm just really trying to think about it. And maybe my answer is no.
Yeah, I think it is no.
Yeah.
But not because of anything he did.
Right.
But because I think there's more of a sense of relief about Nebraska's wide receiver picture as a whole.
Yes.
Versus when he first committed in January, there was a lot more consternation about what the wide receiver picture was going to look like. And now that you've gone through this spring and you sort of, know exactly what you have, but you have a wealth of bodies that you kind of like and guys that seem better than what they sort of had going into 2020 or more advanced. And for some of them who got a year of development, it just feels like there's less immediate pressure on Samori Toure than maybe there was in January. And so on.
I think part of this has to do with his strengths and what he's good at, but don't you think the move to the slot or the usage in the slot, I don't think it'll be exclusively there, but the usage of Samori Toure in the slot is dependent or happens because they feel comfortable about the people who are going to be around him. Like if they felt like Samori Toure was their best chance to win on the outside, he'd be out there.
Yeah. Yep.
And maybe he still is, but they also have options there as well. So you can move him around the field a little bit more. No, I think we're just kind of resigned to he's going to be a good player for Nebraska. We'll see what happens. And that's a really comfortable spot to be in. I think it's good.
I find myself, I guess, most intrigued with him because people like you and Damon, and when we talked with Damon Benning on Tuesday, I mean, you asked him this question, I think, about how he's going to be used and how it's different than maybe it was at Montana. And I had not mentally prepared myself for that. I sort of viewed him as an outside wide receiver that was going to attack the middle of the field on posts and crossing.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what they did in the spring.
Nah, man.
And then the way that you've talked about him brings him much closer to the line of scrimmage to sort of allow him to create with the space that might be there. Because if you're playing him in the slot, you can sort of work yourself into a mismatch if a team has a linebacker or a safety, or if they're playing a nickelback. He's also 6'3", so you can't get away with playing a short nickelback. So I find myself actually really intrigued when I sit and think about him in the slot by sort of all the different avenues it opens up that you didn't necessarily have with Wan'Dale Robinson because of a sort of big gap in height and strength.
What's your point? I think he's a lot closer to Wan'Dale Robinson than I really expected him to be, just as far as what the skill set is. And that really comes from the times that I've seen him, whether it's the big open practice in the spring or the two that we've seen so far this fall. Just the stuff that he seems to be good at is being really, really crisp and quick in the short area, like really, really, moving fast. And not like Xavier Betts is the glidey
Strider,
natural athlete, stallion thing. And and Samori Toure is just more twitchy than I ever expected him to be. So that's been a revelation, I think, for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I have high expectations.
And like I said, I hadn't viewed him in that context. And so when you started saying that about a week ago, and then Damon added to it, and Brunson PC have mentioned it, it has definitely changed the view that I had created for what I sort of expected with Samori Toure. We'll stay on offense. Marquise Stepp, talked about him a little bit earlier in deciding whether or not he knew Jamar Sakona from their USC days.
Hey, did you know Jamar Sakona?
He is healthy, and that seems like a good sign. I mean, much like Samori Toure, there was a lot of excitement when he announced his commitment to Nebraska as a transfer guy, because he brings the element of power and potentially could be a bit of a workhorse between the tackles for Nebraska, something that the fans have been clamoring for, something that, idiots like me have been clamoring for. So we'll see if it plays out that way. But I'm like maybe most excited about Marquise Stepp out of everybody in this group.
I think the job's his if he wants it.
Yeah.
I think they want it to be his. I think he probably got back from that injury quicker than they expected, and maybe that they planned on slow playing a little bit more. And I don't know. I just walked away from that practice on Wednesday thinking, man, I really like Gabe Ervin, and it's awesome that Sevion Morrison is close and he'll definitely have a role, but I just feel like it's Gabe Ervin. I feel like it's Marquise Stepp. Yeah.
Yeah. And if he's healthy, that's the other thing is, like, they don't have to give him the ball 25 times. No. But if he has the ability to withstand 15 to 18 carries and can grind out some tough yards in between the tackle and move the chains and keep Nebraska's offense on the field and give the defense some time to, catch their breath. I mean, it's small stuff like that, but Nebraska hasn't committed to doing that.
You got to do it.
And if they're going to do it, this feels like the kind of running back you can do it with. Mm-hmm. And I am, I just want to see that happen. Yeah, Mills was 100%.
Yeah.
I was standing on my head trying to just.
He needs the ball more.
Yeah. Into the ether, and that was before the start of the 2020 season. And
type of guy that's better after his 15th carry
than
he is after his 4th.
And so I guess for me the big thing with Stepp is going to be if he's off the pitch count, like, are they going to give him, like, are we going to ever see like 6 carries in a row for Marquise Stepp?
Hope so.
I do too. That's the way that I personally want this team to play, and it has been for a while now. Whether or not they get there, I don't know, but I think he has that ability. I'm excited about him. At the very least, I continue, and I've said this multiple times on this show, I think Nebraska is going to be a much improved red zone team because of the variety of weapons that they have. And they're much harder to defend when you have a guy like Marquise Stepp, and you also have Adrian. And so when you are running that zone read and you have this giant bowling ball running back, and Adrian just decides to keep it because you're sucking in on it that hard, it makes his life easier too. And oh, by the way, the RPO is going to be there with Samori Toure or whoever else.
Yeah.
And he's got a little bit more of a frame to work with. So the
Ryan
whole
held-
thing inside 10, 15 yards just feels way better.
Well, and
this
then
year.
don't forget about the guys in the outside who they seem
Yeah.
to trust a little bit more. Ryan Held actually mentioned that the other day, and I thought, like, that's kind of part of what I wanted to hear. Like, those guys are going to help Nebraska get better in the middle too, which is where they need to get better.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Absolutely. And then on the defensive side, you have Chris Kolarovich, who has continued what felt like a really strong off season for him, in which his numbers and his testing caught a lot of attention. You hear a number of linebackers. Luke Reimer was commenting on him a couple weeks ago about just being impressed that he's a really good athlete and he works. And so, you know, they're pretty sure he's going to know where he needs to be, what he needs to do. And I don't think that Luke Reimer used the word seamless, but it seems like he has fit into that room pretty well so far.
Yeah, I'm pretty convinced of that too. These are good. These are good fits for what Nebraska needed. I think they kind of picked the right guys. It feels
They're
like
good personality fits.
Yeah, in the portal.
That's a weird thing to say, but it does matter. I mean, when you're bringing in somebody with experience, you also need them to be able to fit into that room, because people are going to either be trying to take their job right away or, you know, looking for them for guidance. And I think a lot of these guys provide a little veteran leadership.
Yeah, and you just look over from last year. I mean, basically everybody's back with the exception of Mills and Colin Miller and now Will Honus too. And did you lose any wide receivers from last? Wandale, and there you go.
I mean, you did, but it's Wandale, which is big.
Yeah.
And then it's Luke whenever he played a little wide receiver, which he didn't do much of in 2020. And then you lost Jamie Nansen to Marion Houston, who.
Oh, and Cade Warner.
Yes.
Don't forget. Don't.
I did. I forgot him.
You can't forget about him.
Sorry. Just like when we would run through the wide receivers in 2020 and people would pop in with it. And I'd forget about him then.
It just feels like they got, you know, really direct replacements for all those guys.
Yeah.
Like it was a really plug and play situation. Hard time deciding who of those transfers I feel best about at this point.
Three-way tie for first. Sorry, Tyreek Johnson, you're fourth.
I guess it's Toure.
Yeah.
I guess.
That's the one you feel is safest?
Yeah, that feels the safest.
For me, it's probably Kolarovich.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Yeah. And the one with the most. So this isn't where we were going, but now we're here.
Yeah.
The one that I think raises Nebraska in terms of winning games might be Marquise Stepp.
Yeah.
Like if they all play to their biggest potential, he would have the largest impact to me out of those other three. And it's close with him and Toure. Kolarovich is down a little bit because that defense as a whole was
okay. Actually, you know what? I'll push back. I would argue for Toure there. I would argue because I don't know if it's specifically about him. It's just about Nebraska's running game in general and how they need to rebalance it.
Yeah, and that's fair.
I'm talking about Stepp.
But it all sort of works together.
Yeah, it does. It does. And he'll be the guy with the yards at the end of the year. So it's not nothing. But I think anything that Nebraska gets wide receiver wise is going to be, you know, more impactful on the running back position than the other way around. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think the addition.
So I was actually thinking it would sort of work like Minnesota. You run the ball downhill and then you play action teams.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's the other way.
Adrian's not nearly as efficient, so it's harder to play that way.
I think the fact that they haven't had so let's go back 2018. Like the question was, who was the bigger loss, Stanley Morgan and Divina Zigbo? I think it's Stanley Morgan. I think when you take that piece away from Nebraska's passing game, their whole offense kind of collapses on itself.
It's just so hard because there's so much that they haven't done well.
Yeah.
And then it's like You also
There's
just,
so much blame to go around.
Oh,
You're
right.
Yeah.
You don't even know where to start, like play calling, offensive line play.
I think look at their
edge
look
blocking.
at these wide receiver groups the last 2 years.
Yeah. No, they haven't.
I mean, they've been
they have
bad.
not been good enough.
And they've had Mills, and yeah, they haven't let him get rolling.
When they let him eat, he ate.
Right.
Wisconsin and Rutgers.
But I just think what those guys can do in terms of spreading the field on the perimeter means a lot for the running game too. I tend to think that's how it will go.
We'll save this. We'll bring this conversation to the morning.
Yeah, we got to
continue
this. How do we even write this down?
I'll tell you during our break here, but
Okay.
I want real quickly your thoughts on Tyreek Johnson, on what you've heard.
Well, I think he's in the mix to be. Well, actually, I think he's due for some playing time. Like I think he's
come along much faster than I anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Newsome and Cam Taylor-Britt.
Mm-hmm.
But he's right there in the mix to be that next guy, and I think they'll probably get to 3, maybe 4 corners.
Yeah, Clark's gonna play if he's healthy. He's been
Um,
slow this fall, it sounds like.
So I think that's a battle for maybe 2 spots among the 3 guys with Johnson, Clark, and Lynham.
Yep.
And I think he's right there and can step in a pinch.
I definitely thought Johnson was more about 2022 than 2021. I still think that way, but he's going to have more of an impact in 2021.
Well, he'll be huge in 2022.
Yeah. No, he's going to be very important in 2022. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We're going to finish up with some recruiting. We'll pass along a few nuggets, and we will end